Good evening, guys. So before I start this next section, I want to address some concerns that some people may have. They may not, some of them will tell me directly and some of them will tell me indirectly, but they're concerns that I can definitely tell some people have. Some people think I lack confidence. And I'll tell you this. It's not that I lack confidence. I'm fully confident in my abilities. It's just the expression of that confidence. It's not that I lack confidence in my abilities. It's that I lack confidence in other people's ability to see my abilities. Or I lack confidence that they will receive them well. I don't think I'm anything all that special, but you have to defend yourself when you're clearly being set against a different standard from when compared to everyone else. It's cheating against the rules. It's wrong. It's what evil people do. But they'll say that that's the only way, and then when it comes down to it, you can be held to a different standard and it still be okay if you consent to it, that is, if your ability to rise above that adversity is recognized. But evil will not recognize it because that gives you solace, and they want to torture you. I'm not trying to say that the majority of the people I worked with in the previous points of my career were necessarily evil or anything, and no more evil than any other human being. But what I am trying to say is that there were definitely some of them that didn't really know who they were following or what they were listening to, whoever was telling them to do this to me, or if it was just them having some type of deep-seated resentment for me for some reason that I cannot even fathom. But one way or another, they were making actionable the evils that we're all claiming to try to be fighting in this world. It was disgusting. It was disgusting. Nevertheless, I do see a silver lining to this. I'm not going to give that to the evil people who genuinely did want to hurt me. And they did exist. They do. They're still in high positions of power, relatively speaking. But the silver lining for me and for those that I love and those I want to help, you guys, the listeners, and really the rest of the world if I ever get the chance, I bring out of the cave, from the wilderness, if you will, what projection is, and what evil is, and how to identify it and fight it. There's nothing new, really, and I've said that many a time. Every time I talk to you, I always refer back to God, and that is it is, in fact, the most important thing I derived from this entire experience, even if it pisses me off in some ways. Don't get me wrong, I'm an imperfect man. But it has brought me closer to God. I've always believed in God. Since the first moments I could put thoughts together in my head. It's just wasn't put together in a way that was typical, if you will. Like I would bring up to my mother. She told me when I was like 3 years old, I would ask her questions about God as if it was a certainty that he existed, and she wouldn't be able to answer them. So, it has gotten me closer to God, I'll tell you that. Kind of broken away the veil of who and what I am, I guess. So that's a blessing. But I'm not going to give that to evil people who will only use it against me. There's resentment and there's gratitude. Gratitude requires you to want forgiveness. Resentment is just a spiral down into nothingness. You take forgiveness as weakness when you are resentful. primitive laws of nature. There's no civilization that can be built from that. Gratitude builds. It is, and that's what God is, grace. He gives us grace, that is. That's what builds community. But now I'll begin, it was a 5-minute intro. Nevertheless, I'll begin the next section. All right, let's see where I left off. Lo and behold, the squadron director of operations flew with me and my instructor evaluator on my check ride, and I got a Q1 with 1 deviation. Mind you, my deviation was for procedures which my instructor told me that I performed flawlessly, except I took more than a second to get the gear up. I performed the maneuver better than both of the other pilots on board and my evaluator, and still he gave me a Q1 minus. But I accept it, because I was just happy that it was over with. Forgive me for moving from present tense to past tense. It's strange wording that I put in here earlier, but it'll work. I tried to move forward with yet another blank slate, but my hopes are crumbling, as after 4 iterations, the grass has not been greener on the other side. Nevertheless, I give it another shot. I set up a meeting with my new DO, Director of Operations, to tell him my goals and aspirations. He requested that we do this. I guess I shouldn't have listened to him. And he wanted to get some FaceTime with us, and to get to know us, and I him. I went to him as opposed to the squadron commander because he seemed more open. My new squadron commander seemed tense and cold. I do not keep it a secret what my goals are, but at the same time, I don't flaunt them about. I also tell my leadership that I wish to deploy as soon as possible to gain experience. In addition to that, despite co-pilots usually only being able to get 1 flight per month due to the constraints on training flights, I push to get 5 flights and a handful of simulators before I deploy in 3 months. So I'm pushing a little bit harder, which they want you to do, by the way. Attaining both my touch and go certification and my aerial refueling certification in that time. At the time of this writing, it is typical to take up to a year for co-pilots to attain these certifications. And I wrote this on the 21st of October 2017. Notable during this transition was a flight with a guard lieutenant colonel. So he let me do all the AR I wanted, and I got about 20 minutes on the boom without a single disconnect. A competency level usually attained by seasoned aircraft commanders and above, and those people are individuals with a bare minimum of 1,000 hours of in-command flying experience or more. I had even deployed for the first. I hadn't even deployed for the first time yet. The rest of my flights were with known, hard-ass lieutenant colonels, and every one of them thought I flew very well. These were all instructor pilots, with several thousands of hours of experience apiece, and I got along with them well, even though they were known to be hard. But to my first deployment, I wrote an MFR on my mistreatment, and I will explain that later. On my first deployment, the first few days went well enough. I was paired with an aircraft commander with whom, up until that point, I had gotten along well. We had flown a couple flights together during our initial qualification phases, and discussed piloting at length with one another. I felt at first that it would be a fantastic deployment with a solid aircraft commander, but it was not. And here's a tangential aspect that really got me thinking when I looked back on it. I remember catching him staring at me in a fascinated manner from across the dining facility in the morning, before our third flight when we were on our deployment. It went downhill from there. The following MFR explains how events transgressed over my first deployment. MFR is Memorandum for Record. Below is a detailed timeline and analysis of the events that transpired over the course of my approximately 75 days flying with the front end of crew. It is completed to the best of my ability with regards to what I can remember, with as much bias removed as possible. And also, I will scrub it here for any potentially classified information. Mind you, this MFR shouldn't have had any of that in it to begin with, so just in case, I'll scrub it a little more. So, in the time frame of June of 2015, the crew I was flying with, we all in process. At this point, the crew is tired, but generally in very good spirits, as the deployment just started. I, as the co-pilot, worked on getting better acquainted with the crew. But at this point, communication with the back end had not yet been established. I'm not going to tell you the details of that. It's not secret or anything, but you probably don't need to know about that. The aircraft commander is getting a feel for his position in the overall crew dynamic, as am I, as the co-pilot. The aircraft commander takes me on a short run around the base that we're staying at in order to show where I can find everything. The crew I'm flying with has 2 flights with the previous crew, in which the previous crew was very meticulous and repetitive with the details, so that we were prepared. Sorry about the dogs. I'll leave it there and I'll come back tomorrow. Or maybe in the next few days. I don't really have a set schedule because I don't have anybody that I'm trying to satisfy here. Alright, I'll talk to you later.